This is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
Hello.
And we are joined by Jason.
Hello.
And we are getting together tonight to talk about Clark Ashton Smith's poem, Amithaine. But before we do that, just a quick reminder, if you like my channel, if you like my work, you like what I do, please consider supporting me via Subscribestar. That's subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great, and the link is, of course, in the description. Having said that, Nate has volunteered to read the poem for us tonight, so I am going to get that up on the screen.
Don't believe him. He's holding my family hostage. I volunteer for nothing.
What's the character in the Terry Pratchett novel, Nobby? It was like, they were trying to get me to volunteer, and they were trying to get him to be king, so they could overthrow Vetinari. Anyway,
why did it go spare?
That as well.
It goes spare, I tell you, no.
Okay, so we have.
We haven't even read the poem, and we've already lost track.
Already off track, yes. Okay.
This is a new high for us.
Here we go. Amithaine by Clark Ashton Smith. Once you see it, feel free to start.
All right. Title as stated, author as stated. Who has seen the towers of Amithaine, swan-throated rising from the main, whose tides to some remoter moon flow in a fadeless afternoon? Who has seen the towers of Amithaine shall sleep and dream of them again. On falcon banners never furled, beyond the marches of the world, they blaze forth the heraldries of dream-established sovereignties, whose princes wage immortal wars for beauty with the bale-red stars. Amid the courts of Amithaine, the broken iris rears again. Restored from gardens youth has known, and strains from ruinous viols flown. And legends tell in Amithaine of her that is its chatelaine. Dreamer, beware, in her wild eyes full many a sunken sunset lies, and gazing you shall find perchance the fallen kingdoms of romance, and past the bournes of north and south follow the roses of her mouth. For trumpets blare in Amithaine, for paladins that once again ride forth to ghostly glamorous wars against the doom-preparing stars. Dreamer, awake, but I remain to ride with them in Amithaine.
Okay. Thank you, Nate. Before we get to anything else, there's one question I have to get addressed. What's a paladin?
God dang it, Sean, we've talked about this. Your best friend was a paladin. He died in the last game. You know this.
Sorry, Jason, do you know what do you know what this is referring to?
No.
Okay. And again, we are already off track somewhat, although it is based on something in the poem. There's Noah Antweiler, aka the Spoony one. He did a video review of the series, of the Ultimate Game series, and in the last game, which is commonly considered a complete failure and a disastrous end to a fantastic series. At one point, the main character asks someone, "What's a paladin?" and Spoony absolutely freaks out on hearing this, because Dupre, who is a paladin, was a great friend of the main character, and in fact sacrificed his life for him in an earlier game. And it's like he spends at least 5 minutes on what's a paladin and how messed up it is that this character is asking that question. So it's worth watching that whole his whole series on Ultima. And I'm sad that he seems to have, basically, disappeared from, doing his video show. Or I think he's still doing something, but it's like hardly anyway. But Jason, as the less frequent guest, why don't you start? What do you think of this poem? What are your first impressions?
Oh, of course. Ask the guy who knows the least about poetry to start. That's fantastic. I mean, you could have at least picked like a Lovecraft poem to do this, but no. The
word love is in there and something about craft.
Yeah.
Same thing, right?
Yeah, close enough. It's just like only this far away from Cthulhu being mentioned. No.
Last poem.
Oh, you couldn't have brought me in for that one. Okay, gotcha. The whole, I guess, just the imagery of it really jumps out to me. It's, even though there aren't as many visual adjectives as I normally see or often see in most poems, it still feels like, reading this poem, I can envision what's going on here. I can, I can see these towers. I don't know. It's very visual, despite not having that many visuals.
Yeah, I can see that too. It's I think atmospheric is a good word for this one.
Yes.
The other thing about this, it does it reminds me in concept, at least, of a something that's from Lovecraft, which is the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath.
Yeah.
Because it, like, Amithaine, as he describes it here, it seems like a strange like meeting place of, it has a reality of its own, but we mostly will interact with it in dreams.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it I have to admit, I haven't read Kadath yet. I've read a fair bit of other Lovecraft things, but I haven't got to that yet. But how about you, Nate? What are your first thoughts on this one?
Well, I shared them with you in a conversation we had earlier, that this is sort of, the mirror negative of Zothique. It's not, this is a ruinous place with, all these crazy thorns and blood seas and dark skies. This place sounds, I don't know, like Numenor.
Yeah, it's
it's got sort of that, like, that faded, like that sort of, fading out glory, right? That you'd expect from, like, this great kingdom that is just, over time it isn't what it once was, but it's still, it still retains a lot of the power and a lot of the majesty of it, but you also get this sort of sad idea that maybe it's fading. I mean, after all, their war is against the stars. And, they ride forth on these ghostly paladins. And, like, is it that their spirits remain to fight on for the kingdom even after death? Or, like, is it something else? It's just, you get the idea that the power here is waning, but it's still a pretty nice place. And it sounds like less a place that you will be, like, compelled to come back to, where there's, like, just, it doesn't twist you like, Zothique apparently is supposed to. This place sort of makes you want to stay. It's like, this is the kind of place I would love to be, and so I'm Well, well, Dreamer, I'm staying around.
I actually, and maybe this is because not as much as I'd like to, but I have done some writing myself. It seems like this is also a little bit talking about writing and how it feels to create these worlds, and that's kind of how I see that last part. He's like, Dreamer awake, but I remain to ride with them in Amithaine. It's like, you've got to go back to your life, but living in these worlds, live and watching these wars and and meeting and being wary of these beautiful, dangerous women. This is what I do. This is in fact my life. So something that's not too common for me. I had to look up the one word in here, which is chatelaine. And so for others who share my vocabulary deficiency in this case, chatelaine would be the mistress of a manor or the lady of a chateau. She is the this is the woman who's castle who is the lady of this castle. But let's see.
Yeah, I like that the idea that this is maybe an author speaking to an audience, about like his fictional world, or about this and then the audience goes back to their real life while the author then has to come back to his fictional world and continue dreaming about it, to create the next chapter, the next poem. I like that.
And one other thing, this is the second poem of Clark Ashton Smith's I've done for this channel. Nate was with me to cover the other one. Zothique, the first one, is actually is the setting of a number of short stories by Clark Ashton Smith. As far as I can tell, which is kind of funny, putting it in the context of what we were just talking about. As far as I can tell, this is the only time he talks about Amithaine. Like, this isn't the setting of any of his stories or anything. Which I guess he never felt confident chronicling their wars.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see.
Yeah, I feel about this one much as I felt about the other one, to be honest. Although, I guess if I had to choose one, I'd pick Amithaine because I like things that are, good and beautiful. But yeah, I had a lot to say about Zothique if you want to go check the other video. But like I said, on this one, again, it feels like world building. You're right, but I'm just kind of like, I'm not 100% interested in it as a poem because that's fine. That's all good. But just by itself, like I said, it needs. So there needs to be more beyond it for me to really want to hear it as a poem. So I'm like, okay. I guess I spent too much time on the internet and like these little it's like RPG forums and freaking story stuff where people just talk about, hey, this is my character. I'm like, I don't care about your character. What's the story? He's got all the abilities and he's immortal and he's immune to all damage and he never has to sleep or eat or drink. And I'm like, oh, okay, so he's like even worse than a Mary Sue. He's Superman. He's a Mary Superman.
What was and this is and this one is kind of on the other side of that because this has the setting and the general frame of the world, but there's no specific people here. there is this lady of the castle, but we don't.
You'll be getting a lot of quests from her.
What's that?
You'll be getting a lot of quests from her. Just get used to seeing her with an exclamation point over her head. He did mention that in the poem, though. It just throws me off a little bit. I don't know. Maybe she's in-game content.
Now, is this a poem that was released by EA? Because if that's the case, you're probably going to have to pay about $20 just to download, all of her extra quests and everything. I mean, in-game purchases will get you every time.
No, you're right. Amithaine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wait, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there are another 3 stanzas of downloadable content.
Yep. It's EA. It's what, $1.99? Oh, $10. Oh, okay, yeah. I figured. I heard you can get like a season pass though, and it's only like $20 or something. You get all 3 of those, so you save $10, and it comes with commentary or something. Yeah.
We're the commentary of the poor bastards.
Oh, okay.
It means they already bought it. They're already screwed.
Oh.
That was better than if it was from Blizzard, because, then you can talk about stuff like, paladins riding for justice because communism. Go Hong Kong.
Well, or it's, oh crud, the people who make Red Dead Redemption, what's the other one?
Yeah.
Skyrim.
Rockstar.
Yeah. Then it would just have characters randomly glitching and slowly disappearing into the floor and
the paladins rode forth and then rode back and then rode back. Then they rode into the sky because that's Star Wars, right?
Paladins glitched through the walls of Amithaine. Yeah. Yeah, I'm
they
convinced.
Were never seen again. Their assets within the wall were held by the glitch's unbreakable spell. Their swords continued with hands unseen to fight the enemies of Amithaine.
Now, quick question. So I've read a little Clark Ashton Smith, but not much. Does he have too many? Does he have any references to any Near Eastern mythology, like Babylonian, Assyrian, anything like that?
I do not know off the top of my head. I've read a few stories here and there, in anthologies, but I don't. I've not actually studied a lot of his stuff outside of his poetry, which I've memorized 2 of them now. No, I don't know. Is there one you were thinking of that this reminds you of?
Not exactly. It's just there's a sort of theme that you find in some Near Eastern mythology, and there almost seems to be a reference in 2 places here where he talks about the stars, whose princes wage immortal wars for the beauty with the pale red stars, and near the end, ride forth to ghostly glamorous wars against the doom preparing stars. In some Near Eastern mythology, they have this idea that some important people, such as princes, generals, things like that, kings, are connected directly with the stars. And so, if there's if someone sees a shooting star, they see a meteor, they think that this foretells the impending doom of some kind of national leader. And you see this quite often. There's actually a bunch of stuff written about it concerning Mithridates, one of the enemies of Rome. I cannot remember where he was from.
I think he was in what's now Turkey. I think it was Asia Minor.
Yeah. I think around Sinope or something like that. Anyway, you see something like that. They talk about he was going towards some big battle, and they saw a comet or something, and he thought it had something to do concerning him. But you also see this a lot in their mythology as well, where great leaders are often, whenever they're often written about as stars. And even you see that imagery quite often.
Well, and it's also
actually in an interesting and much more recent tale. There's actually a comet appeared in the days before the Civil War, and there's at the time fairly well-known slave woman who was known as something of a fortune teller. And she said of that comet, said that it had sort of like a flared end and a long tail that pointed south. And she said it was a sword, and that if Abraham Lincoln took up that sword against the South, he would defeat them, but he would grab that sword at the cost of his own life. And it turned out, so that's apocryphal, but if true, interesting. And it kind of goes in with the whole ideas.
Yeah, well, the whole thing kind of ties in with the old like Babylonian astrology and stuff like that. But this idea that they're like princes and generals and kings and wise men and stuff, and they're directly connected with stars. They even thought that whenever they would die, they would ascend up into the sky and become an actual star. And so I just see this, and it talks about these princes going to war against stars, and it's like, is he actually talking about stars, or is he using a slightly obscure reference to like a legion of powerful people?
Well, and
that's actually pretty good. That's a good reading. I like that.
Well, and the other thing with that,
to it, because sorry, Sean, I keep cutting you off. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say with the other thing with that, the near the line near the end, the penultimate line, against the doom preparing stars, which that sounds like it's talking about the ideas of astrology and such and such things are fated coming from the stars, which then that actually sounds like a pretty bad deal for Amithaine and these paladins, because they are waging war against the stars from whom fate comes. And it's like that's probably not going to go well for them.
Yeah. Well, part of heroism is fighting against fate. You defy it to the end, even though you know it'll overcome you, because maybe in doing so you can do good for other people. But in the end, honestly, to me, this almost like turns into like a sort of fantasy sci-fi mashup, because like this kingdom has endured until sort of the heat death of the universe. The stars grow dim red and cold, and in the end, the power they couldn't defeat was just the depth of time.
I like that.
And so they're riding forth their ghostly wars. I don't know. Maybe Amithaine is done. Maybe all the people are actually, have gone on and died, and now all that's left is sort of their technology and systems that are there, trying to keep things up, trying to, stave things off. There's a lot of ways you can take this, actually. Although, honestly, I still would probably fall on the fantasy side of this.
Let's see. It's yeah, like in terms of like just what is the actual story, what's going on here, like it seems like, okay, who has seen the towers of Amithaine shall sleep and dream of them again. And like somehow someone comes in contact with this initially, and then after that you will be brought back, but it's a regular dream. It's not, and like I said, it reminds me a little bit of what I understand of the Dream Quest of Kadath, which that's kind of how that goes, right? Because it's another world of its own, and it's a real place, but humans primarily will come into contact with it through our dreams. Is that correct?
Yeah, so like it's a real place, but you can't just travel to it. It's almost like it exists in in another reality, I guess.
So what you're saying is one does not simply walk into Kadath.
That is exactly what Sean Bean would say.
And then he would die.
Yeah, I mean, that's a given. You know.
That actually made me just a little bit mad when I watched The Martian, because they had Sean Bean and he didn't die. It's like, how do you do that? You can't have Sean Bean in a movie and not kill him.
That shows his capabilities as an actor, and he can also play someone who survives.
Whoa. Have y'all seen the Frankenstein Chronicles?
No.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. No. Then I can't tell you because it'd be major spoilers. I won't do that. Just it's on Netflix. You need to watch it. He plays an investigator in London. They're like, bodies washing up ashore and stuff like that, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. You need to watch it. I think the first season is maybe 8 or 10 episodes or something. It's great show. You need to check it out. And after you watch season 1 and you start in on season 2, then you need to call me so we can talk about Sean Bean's character in this TV show. It's really it's a fun character. So yeah, watch that after you get after you start in on season 2. Hit me up, because I'm not going to give any spoilers, especially not on something that good.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. You see, you mentioned earlier, I don't remember if we were off air or not, now I think about it. But anyway, you mentioned Pathfinder. And I'm like, the thing that strikes me most about this or Zothique is this sounds like just, a setting. And it sounds like, you're getting ready to run a campaign here. And so it's like, cool. What are our adventures in the land of Amithaine going to be? And so, like I said, and clearly that's the point, because he wrote the stories about the other one. I just wonder why he didn't write stories about this one.
Well, there's a few possibilities with that. One is that he actually did write them, but they were never published for some reason. Another, I don't know, the date when this was written, and how late it was. Perhaps this was something relatively late in his career, and he just never had time. It does. This is definitely more, very much like Zothique. This is a setting. This is you come to the castle of Zothique. You meet the lady of the house, and you after a brief glance in her eyes, you quickly turn away for fear that you may be lost in them forever. So
it's like, or maybe it could also be the start of an epic. It's like, hey, this is here where we're going to have our adventures. It's like, hey, these are our wine dark seas, or the swan-throated towers of Amithaine under the doom-sending red stars. It says, I sing for you a tale of paladins riding forth to immortal ghostly wars, and of a beautiful, bewitching woman, behind her castle walls. And it's like, and then it goes on to tell the story of, I don't know, the lady, or the paladins, or maybe the stars themselves. Just, gosh, it needs more. It needs more things.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this is the beginning of something. We should be coming back to this, God
dang it, he was right. We glimpsed the towers of Amithaine. Now we want to go back. Fantastic. You got us.
Well, I mean, I have heard some people say that the best rule in show business is leave them wanting more. So it kind of sounds to me like you're starting to come around on this one, Nate.
No.
No.
I refuse to. Stupid lady. Screw her. pick up her swan-throated tower and punch her into the doom-singing stars. Screw that. No, it leaves you on. It's like, all right, what's the point of this place? Like, what are the stars doing? What did they do that you're at war with them? What are they sending? What is the doom that is on the way? What are you riding forth against? Why are your paladins ghostly, for God's sake? Come on, tell me about it.
It's
an appetizer.
The paladins are not ghostly. That is the wars, by the way. Just a point there.
I'm sorry, ghostly paladins are not going to be fighting. Physical paladins aren't going to be fighting ghostly wars. Come on now.
Although, let's see, ghostly paladins. That's the order. That's the order of the stick during the conquest of Azure City.
Yeah.
Jason, do you know the order of the stick, by the way?
No.
Oops.
Oh gosh, boy. Yeah, it's a webcomic. I don't know how many years it's been going now. It must be at least a decade.
Several, we'll say.
But it's a it's a webcomic. And it follows the adventure, a group of adventurers. It starts out basically just being a series of one-off jokes about D&D, and then it kind of actually developed a plot of its own. And at one point,
which is actually pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's taken some interesting turns. So you can add. So like, I'll mark down the Frankenstein Chronicles, and you can mark down the Order of the Stick. But it's at one point the villain is trying to capture this capture this castle, and like he comes into this room, and it's absolutely like packed with paladins who are there specifically to defend like this, what's in this room. And he actually kills them all pretty quickly. It's not that big a problem for him. What he didn't know was that these ones here in this room were actually pledged to continue defending this room after they died. And so then he's facing an entire room full of ghost paladins. He's like, this actually hurts. Nothing has been able to hurt me in a long time, but this actually hurts. So, it's a really fun series, and it's got some very interesting plot twists recently. But I'm also not.
It's also got the only villain that is like really made sense to me with his motivations for like just going to think. He says that, hey, look, yeah, sure. I mean, we take over all these little countries, and then all these little kingdoms, and we rule them with an iron fist, and eventually some plucky band of heroes are going to come get us. Sure, but hey, I mean, we'll be in charge for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and while we're doing that, it's a sweet ride, and they're never going to have the pluck to really finish us off, so we escape, let them think we're dead, and then we do it all again somewhere else with different names. It's perfect racket. I was like, you're a good villain. I like you.
Well, yeah, and you often see genre-savvy, side characters. You sometimes see genre-savvy heroes. You don't very often see genre-savvy villains. That doesn't seem very common to me. I think I've covered most of the things I wanted to say about this poem. Nate, how about you? Did you have any last thoughts on this one?
Nope. I've pretty much got out what I wanted to say. It's just kind of like, all right. Said much more pleasant than the other one. Just nice. I like hearing about places that sound like it'd be fun to spend a weekend.
Although, if you were trying to write the adventures of so and so, it would probably be more interesting to drop that person in Zothique and see what happens to them rather than Amithaine.
Well, it depends on the nature of so-and-so. Is so-and-so a good guy? Yeah, you should probably drop him in Zothique, because then he has to struggle against things that are not sort of aligned with his nature, and probably have, especially if he's like some, well, I don't know, paladin that rides to ghostly wars. You'd probably want to drop him in a Zothique and be like, let's see how well your righteousness holds up. If he is a scoundrel and a true blue dyed-in-the-wool bastard, then you should probably drop him into Amithaine and see if he can be redeemed or how long it takes before his evil catches up with him.
That's a pretty good point. Jason, how about you? Any big points on this one we haven't gotten to yet?
Well, I think if we're going to connect this to Lovecraft's Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, then maybe we should look at this poem as a possible prequel to The Doom That Came to Sarnath. I mean, both places are like these, they're nice and bright. There's they have like these tall gleaming towers. And then I think there's like a weird race of people that comes down from the moon, and eventually near the end of it, everything gets destroyed and only a handful of survivors escape. So maybe this is like a prequel, that this kind of builds up the tension, and then Lovecraft comes in and is like, oh, guess what? Everyone dies, Sean Bean included.
No. Well, the last scene, the end scene credits, like the end credit scene, shows the swan-throated towers all crushed and ruined, but then there's like this half-covered table just starts to shimmy and shake, gets thrown aside, and Sean Bean just jumps to his feet and laughs and laughs.
Everyone died but Sean Bean.
See, the thing with Lovecraft, though, is the people who die relatively early are usually the luckier ones.
Right,
right. Other people go horrifically mad before they die. So...
Yeah. They find out that they're like half fish person, and or they just end up writing their memoirs on their way to the insane asylum. They get locked away, with all the Batman villains.
Oh, they'll be out soon enough.
Yeah, someday Batman keeps sending those people there, and they never stay, and it's like, Batman, if they're always breaking out, maybe you should figure out someplace else for them to go. Bruce Wayne has the money.
Yeah, I think one thing he could do, is go to Arkham Asylum and just replace all the revolving doors with locking doors. I think that might, because obviously that's what they have there. Because the Joker just walks in and comes right back out. Come on, they don't have a single lock. He could just buy a bunch of padlocks, something. They have none of this, So.
And see, that's why Gotham needs Bruce Wayne and his money more than it needs the Batman.
Right. Just a decent set of bars, and that would fix most of the problems.
I'm like a welding machine. Just weld the door. You don't need to let that guy out. Weld it into the wall and you're done.
Maybe if Batman didn't spend all of his nights punching doctors in the face, then the city might get a little better. It's like every time a doctor pops up, Batman comes out of nowhere and hits him. So all of his villains have PhDs, I think the Joker's the only one without a doctorate.
That's why the scientist is so mad he punched it. Now it's not even mad science; it's just angry science.
Yeah, they're just sick of getting hit by vigilantes. So
I do have to say though that the idea that someone with a PhD is criminally insane. I look at academia today and I'm like, well, yeah, that seems likely enough.
It makes me wonder if maybe the Batman villains, why are they so angry with Batman? they seem to need a bunch of money to fund whatever scheme they're working on. Like, what if Wayne Enterprises had some kind of, science and technology grants? Would that eliminate the crime in Gotham? Because with the exception of the Joker, it's just a bunch of doctors trying to steal money to build something. Maybe we should fund technology instead of just building flying cars that are shaped like bats. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I mean, to be fair, Killer Croc isn't exactly a mental heavyweight.
Oh,
it's all right there in the name.
Okay, so there are two. We've got.
And actually, well, let's see. There's Joker, there's Killer Croc. Penguin's just an arms dealer. Like I said, he's a bog standard dude who has access to weapons, and he likes to be a fat penguin-shaped guy. I don't see how he lasts more than 15 seconds. It's like either shoot Batman in the face or just surrender. It's like, all right, fine, you got me. Let's see here. Then there's the immortal kung fu guy. That's Ra's al Ghul. So actually, Spider-Man has more problem with doctors than Batman does.
Well, now you just messed up my whole theory. You're not supposed to do that.
I'm sorry.
I
was like, hang on a minute. I mean, he could have at least gotten rid of, he could have stopped Harley Quinn, probably. He could have, he could have kept her from going crazy. Probably Poison Ivy, he probably could have helped out. Just, hey, cool, I'm going to send you to the Amazon on botany projects. You're going to be just loving it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Victor Freeze? Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Freeze, that would have actually been a great humanitarian project. I mean, that would have been cool to do, So there are plenty of doctors. I'm just saying, Batman's got way too many enemies for them all to be doctors.
Yeah, the weird Asian guy with the glasses. I can't remember his name. I'm so out of touch with Batman these days, but I cannot remember his name. He was actually in charge of Arkham Asylum for a while. He was a doctor. There was a bunch of them. I'm convinced they're all doctors, though.
Especially the Joker has 3 PhDs.
I mean, he killed somebody and took them, but he's got 3 of them.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I'm Doctor Joker.
That actually sounds. I could actually see that in some movie, probably an animated one, where he has some office and he has a bunch of doctorates on the wall from people he killed. It's like, I'm Dr. Joker. Okay. All right. Well, I think we are done with the poem tonight. So.
Well, no, we were done 20 minutes ago. I think now we're done with Sean Bean and Lovecraft and Batman.
So, I will say, thank you for joining me, gentlemen, and good evening.
Have a good night.